What's up, brother?
Hey DJ, how's it going?
Another day in paradise. My bad. I was getting everything set up over here.
No worries, man. No worries. Thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime, anytime. I'd rather be here than at city council.
You're in Columbus, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't I don't follow Columbus city politics that closely, but having lived in Nashville, I don't live there currently, but I lived there for a while and did city politics there, and it was like, I mean, Parks and Rec was not far off, man. It's wild.
Yeah, and Nashville and Columbus are like very similar in terms of like just real estate lobby gremlins and building
Oh,
everything. They're
Jesus,
very
yeah.
similar.
Oh yeah, yeah. They the development hell, that as I call it, like they're just gobbling it up, and I'm sure that the prices are through the roof for houses in Columbus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm, shame. Well, cool. My co-host isn't able to make it, but we can go ahead and get rolling. I honestly, like, I discovered you, I think, through Twitter, from
Uh,
following the Rooster, and
Likely story.
yeah, that hellhole there. I love what you do. I think it's hilarious, and it's also really important. So I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on a lot of things Ohio, but first I'd love to pick your brain a little bit on how you got into this, like, I guess if you want to call it reporting, activism. I'm not sure how you title yourself, but I did see some lore from you about breaking the Urban Meyer story. Now, is that true?
Yeah, that was me. I did that half drunk. Got the video.
Incredible.
I was a union electrician at the time in their apprentice program and mistaken. I shouldn't have done a Wall Street Journal interview, and that made the Wall Street Journal. Gave some quotes about serving rich people shit cocktails, and it's not the kind of language that contractors generally want to hear from year one apprentices. So that got taken from me. Um,
Oh shit.
yeah, and but it kind of ties into like the origin story. I guess I classify myself as like a concerned citizen that sometimes does journalism. Um,
Okay.
I play I play by a different set of rules than most journalists do. I do break some news. I do protect my sources. But I'm not interested in just regurgitating both sides. Where it's like, here's like right now the big story in Ohio is the 20,000 Haitian immigrants that Joe Biden
Yeah.
has shipped to Springfield. I'm not going to treat those two positions as equal and be like, well, here's one side, or here's JD Vance just completely lying his ass off and present this as like equal moral weight and like that. So in that sense, I am biased. I do admit that I am on the left. Um, I try so at saying that I do when I do get into the news realm or breaking news, I know that I do have to come with receipts,
Hmm.
um, especially on partisan stuff. It's not as easy as just posting a video of Urban Meyer getting a lap dance from a woman that looks like his wife 20 years ago. But it has to be in that same realm, in that just, if I just tweet something like that, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. And I try to bring that. Um, as far as just the video work at the state house, that started, I was at this honky tonk bar called the Patio, oldest bar in the oldest neighborhood in Montana. I quit drinking, but I was smoking a cigarette outside like a cool guy with one of my buddies. He's about as far on the right as I am on the left. And he was like, "Have you ever heard of free speech audits?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "Well, you should look it up. You're pretty cool. You'd be good at it." And I went
Okay.
home, and I don't know if you're familiar, if your listeners are, but anyone who's not, it's basically like these guys that go into police stations, post offices, uh, but basically government buildings, and they film, and they try to get basically thrown out for filming or obstructed, and then they file like violations or what and whatever from, I don't know. It seems like you can make money that way, but I didn't want to harass everyday citizens.
Hmm.
But then it hit me. I've been following the Tennessee Hauler, if you're familiar with
Oh
them.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Justin Canoe. Yeah, we had him on a few months back. He's a good
Yeah.
guy.
And I had seen like the kind of stuff that he did and being at the state house, and then it like hit me. A revelation. I've been writing about politics, basically a mile from the state house, and it never really occurred to my drunken, alcohol-ridden brain, uh, that I could go up there to the state house and it works. It's a public ground.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my critique has been with this the current media atmosphere that it's for better or worse, we're in a video era. It's one thing to read about Bill Dean, a state rep from Xenia, saying that he doesn't believe a husband can rape a wife if they live together and they're married. He does. It's one thing to like read that in text. It's another to like see him like the callous
Yeah.
laughter. It just travels well better, and it travels easier on TikTok, on video, on Twitter. I'm not so much on Facebook. I'm sure it does well there. Um, and it's just that whereas like these guys are never on video, and like if they have stories that break, or if other legacy outlets break these stories about Dave Dobos, a guy who was a Columbus City school board president, didn't have an MIT degree, lied about having an MIT degree for 30 years.
Incredible.
Cleveland.com busted him, great reporter work. But then if he doesn't submit, they'll submit requests for comment, like, can we get a comment on the story? If he just says, no, not today, not, he can just ignore it and it kind of goes away.
Yeah.
And so what I try to do in stories that I don't break, or I just try to clean up other people's reporting too. And like I feel like these, you should have to answer these questions on camera. And if you don't want to do that, then the genius of the business model is that like any American, regardless of political suasion, can understand the concept of a politician in their quote unquote place of work, um, running away from questioning.
Hmm.
If
And
they
to
look
see
guilty.
it is to believe it. Because, like, with print, a lot of times these politicians, they can be like, oh, well, that's fake news, or they took my comments out of context or something. But video is a real source of truth, and it's harder for them to obfuscate and deny when you have their face saying those words.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't take people out of context. I post the entire clips. If there is some dispute, I'll post the entire clips. Like I'm generally not looking for a got you. But the beauty of it is that a lot of these guys, especially in state politics, they're just not ready for prime time in
No,
any sense of the
no, they're
word.
not.
So,
They get these.
so
They run these
yeah,
primaries that are gerrymandered all to shit. Ohio's, I think, one of the worst gerrymandered states, and
yeah.
I felt this way for a long time. Like state level politicians get away with a lot, or they have, because you don't have like a Rooster or Tennessee Holler that's like following them and that's producing things that lots of eyeballs see. Like there's always been great reporting, but I mean, the people that read that, they're already invested. Whereas like these politicians, they are not ready for prime time. They have not been tested, and they get away with like seriously nefarious shit.
Yeah, I mean, we had we're fresh off the HB6 scandal
Mm-hmm.
in Ohio, which was the largest bribery scandal in state history. The
That was
guy
with
that
First Energy, right?
Yeah, First Energy, they paid it was $1 billion scheme basically on taxpayers and to bail out two decrepit coal plants and some nuclear facilities. They paid $60 million in bribes. The guy who accepted the bribes, former Speaker Larry Householder, um, he's in prison for 20 years. But
Yeah.
the people that paid the bribes, they haven't even been criminally charged. And there was an article today in Cleveland.com from Jake Zuckerman, who's been covering this as well as anybody, talked to 60 people, and it's looking like the guy who took the bribes went to jail, but the people who paid the bribes, they've been charged on a state level by our Republican attorney general, who let the scheme go under his nose. So we'll see what happens with that. But the feds haven't even charged the people that paid the bribes on the federal level, and it just looks like they're completely going to skate in that regard. Would
Just
love to be wrong on
bonkers.
that, but that's pretty much what I try to do. I try to take complex issues at the state house and distill them into stuff and clips, video clips that just regular people can understand. Because like I totally get the sense, I totally get why people, like most Americans are overworked, they're underpaid, they're coming home from a job that they probably aren't emotionally satisfied by. The
Yeah.
last thing they really want to do is sit down and contemplate the Republican cabal at the state house. And I tried to get people interested in that and kind of show them, the high crimes that are happening in broad daylight. And also for the politically minded people, I tried to I heard it from a Republican state senator one time when I was a state house candidate. He said, 90% of voters only care about who's in the White House.
Yep.
And especially on the Democratic side. I mean, we're seeing this right now with Kamala Harris. Like, we're showering, Democrats are showering her with money, which, I'm not hating on. But then we're not kicking it down. Like, we're not paying attention to anything down ballot. And the Republicans are so much better at paying attention to state house politics
Oh
and
yeah.
voting from the top to the bottom. And it's something that I want Democrats to get better at, especially in states like Ohio, especially in states like West Virginia or Tennessee, where it's like your enemies. I get that the big bad orange man causes a lot of feelings, and and it would be very bad if he wins. I'm not saying it wouldn't be, but your enemies are also a lot closer to home and they're a lot more accessible. And giving $50, giving $100 to, the Sherrod Browns of the world or the Kamala Harrises of the world, $50 will go a lot further and be much more appreciated by, your state house candidates. And
Oh
most
yeah.
Americans don't even they don't even know who they are.
It's wild the degree of impact that, like you said, that $50 would have for like a local House of Delegates or state house candidate versus that. And you're right, because those are the people that have usually the most direct impact on your life. Federal stuff, yeah, there definitely some, and certainly it trickles down after a while, but it's like abortion bans, like right to work laws, those types of things, they're all passed at the state level. And I feel like people are becoming more engaged because politics is so much more accessible now because of things like that, like video. But it is really astounding that there is so much focus on things like the White House. The proportion is off. Like, it's good that there's focus, but the proportion is completely off. And it's just wild because Republicans have taken advantage of that for years. That's why so many of these states are gerrymandered, and why Republicans control, like in many cases, both chambers of state houses in states that would otherwise be equally divided.
Yeah, I credit a lot of that to for worse. I would say better for worse to television news and the CNNs, the MSNBCs, the Fox Newses. It's just, I mean, from a business standpoint, it's much better to focus on Washington, which applies, to the
Mm-hmm.
whole country, much more bigger market share. Um, than it does to individual state houses. Like, why would I care about something that's happening in like Wyoming or Michigan? And so I get that. And also, none of these guys on the state level are entertaining or bring the numbers like somebody like Donald Trump does.
Exactly.
Uh, People that love him or hate him. So it's kind of, and also I would tie that into the loss of the newspaper industry that the private equity gremlins just completely shredded.
Oh
We
yeah.
see it in we see it in we see it in the big towns, in Columbus, especially how there's just like institutions like the Columbus Dispatch have just been completely liquidated to basically a skeleton of what they are. But I also cite like the middle-sized towns, the 50, 60,000, the 75,000s, where there's just a complete information desert where we went from newspapers used to be a team. You would get a paper every day that was vetted by professionals and curated by professionals. And when that went away in the medium-sized market, I think the right-wing ecosphere that they have built over the last 40 years has moved in, and I think that's what explains a lot of the margins that we see a complete erasure of the rural Democrats. I mean, we had in the Southeast in Ohio, Southeastern and Eastern Ohio used to be traditional, legacy Democrats, and now they're just God-loving patriots out there now, and you just can't break the veil with these people. And I don't even think the Ohio Democratic Party, I mean, Sherrod Brown's the only one that seems to be able to get through in any sense of the word, and the rest of the state party has just kind of written these people off.
Yeah, it's been Ohio's been a real tricky state for a long time. Your point about newspapers is very true because like companies like Gannett will buy up, they like you said, gobble up these mid-sized towns. They did it in Tennessee. There is one mid-sized town in Tennessee that is independently, like the newspaper is independently owned, Chattanooga. The rest are were bought up and gobbled up by Gannett, and they just downsized. I think one of them they even cut like a full-time sports reporter, which is insane for Tennessee. It just shows you that like the model is to strip it down like private equity and just run it for profit regardless of the value of it. And I think you're right. I think it's been that, and it's been money and organizing through things like Americans for Prosperity, where they'll put dark money into some of these smaller races and gerrymandering and all that. We can go into that forever, but you're 100% right. And to focus on Ohio, I am curious. You brought this up before. I literally had not heard of this story until today about this whole Springfield, Ohio Haitian migrant, whatever the fuck, where JD Vance is talking about Haitian migrants eating cats, I guess, because, he's not weird, as we've been told. What the hell is that story, and where the fuck did it come from?
So Ohio is just a great example of post-industrial landscape in America and what kind of free trade. We got our cheap products in the free trade deal, and I'm told it benefits America at large, but it completely changed and hollowed out numerous towns in Ohio. I mean,
Oh yeah,
Zanesville. I'm from Marion. Springfield is the perfect example of that. And so you have you have basically these labor shortages out in rural Ohio in towns like Springfield because Columbus is the only region in the state that's actually growing. But you have a labor
really?
shortage.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, Cincinnati like is like kind of breaking even now, but like Cleveland's lost people, and it basically the Columbus region has put Central Ohio has put Ohio on its back in terms of maintaining our population.
Yeah,
The rest of these places are hemorrhaging. They're hemorrhaging young people, they're hemorrhaging the educated, and so there's a labor gap. And I remember out in Piqua one time when I lived out in Piqua out in Western Ohio by Dayton, I asked the city manager, like, well, all the business people are complaining, none of these white folks want to work anymore. They can't, and if they do, they can't show up sober. What about, bringing in some immigrants? And he just kind of was like, oh yeah, yeah, no, like I'm not losing my job. And
wow.
we're seeing it in Springfield. So Springfield is about I'd say about an hour west of Columbus, right down I-70, hometown of John Legend, if anyone out there knows John Legend.
Random.
But yeah, it's a town like a lot of people had an industrial heyday, called it the champion city, and it's been dying for the last, I would say, 40, 50 years. Shell of itself. They have all these jobs that are open, all this industry that's open, and they can't fill the gaps. But nobody's clamoring to move to Springfield. No disrespect to Springfield. Like I said, I'm from an area much like Springfield. No disrespect, but people aren't clamoring to move there.
Yeah.
So they bridged the gap with Haitian immigrants. I think Joe Biden basically um, allowed, I think it was 300,000 total, basically gave them legal immigrant status. And, you hear on the right all the time, like, we love, immigration's fine. Just, you got to do it the legal
Do it
way.
the right way. Get
Well,
get in the line.
yeah, well, these Haitians did it legally. They're
Yeah.
here legally. And, anybody that's familiar with just America's role in Haiti and what we've done
Yeah.
to that country over the years, the least we could do is house some 300,000 or however many want to come over. It should be open borders for the Haitian people, as far as I'm concerned. But they've put them in. They put about 20,000 in Springfield, and it'll work fine. Like the businesses aren't complaining.
Yeah.
They have workers, they have people working, and in a generation, there will be a simulation. Their kid, we'll get a 5-star recruit. Somebody said on Twitter today perfectly, like it's a new pipeline for our Buckeyes. There's going to be a 5-star recruit here in 20 years with Jean Baptiste as the last name. Like it's
You're
going
not
to work
wrong.
out.
They're not wrong.
It's the story of America, and this is how it works. And it should be a success story, but the right has kind of latched onto it, especially here, coincidentally with an election coming down the roads, in that all the social services that the right wing cares so much about, uh, the social services are overwhelmed.
Mhm.
And there was a viral post. It was just a Facebook. What these people do, they get on Facebook, or you can just get, just put it on phone, TikTok, whatever. And it's always like, well, my name, my daughter's son enrolled in school, or my neighbor said she saw it from her friend, and it went viral. It was over 1 million views last I saw on
Jesus
Twitter.
Christ.
It was just a random Facebook post from some lady claiming that her neighbor had told her that the Haitian immigrants were abducted. They were killing geese, and and abducting pets, and like killing your pets and eating, and then like hanging them out, like prepping them, and like hanging them out, and to eat. And anybody with any critical sense, this is an era where everybody's got phones in their pockets. Like there's no
Yeah.
pictures, there's no evidence. It's just post, um, some Facebook post that's secondhand. It's secondhand, and it gets passed around in the ecosphere, of the right wing media, where they don't care about these kind of claims. The Springfield News, the actual, the vestiges of that local newspaper reported today. There's been no police reports of anything like this. Um, but it gets spun around in right-wing media by the end wokeness, the Jack Pacifics of the world.
Hmm.
People go and they testify, they just lie their asses off in viral video clips, and then it matriculates all the way to JD Vance in the halls of the Senate, claiming that these people, A, one, are here illegally. That's not true. And B, that there have been quote unquote reports of them stealing cats and eating them for whatever purpose. Just racist nonsense. That's the typical flashpoint, the culture war bullshit that they're just so good at feeding into America, to Americans. And then you get the racists that are like, oh, 20,000 Haitian immigrants, da 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 da. And then you have like people like me that have to like kind of explain it to people. And and then most people like are just,
Incredible.
and then most people that I think about the average person. You just have people like me and JD Vance shrieking at each other, and they get tuned out as just politics as usual, which is a victory for the right wing in itself in this country.
Hmm. And
As
there's always an immigration story that somehow seems to rear its head during an election year. Just I'm sure
Yeah,
it's a big coincidence and has nothing
yeah.
to do with the right wing media spinning it up. I'm sure,
A-
but
And it's just racism, because
one hundred
I'm
percent.
preaching to the choir here. I'm sure your readers, like, the right just has this unholy alliance of racists and then the big business. And like if we kicked out illegal immigrants tomorrow, if every one of them got it, our economy would collapse
Oh, the businesses would
overnight.
be pissed. They would be so pissed, especially the
Yeah,
small business owners that employ undocumented immigrants under the table so they can
yeah.
pay them less. They will be real pissed.
Yeah, and I guess the only upshot would just be all these screeching baby boomers about 20, just go die alone in an understaffed nursing home then. Have fun.
Yeah,
Have fun.
in a nursing home that with striking workers because they pay them fucking poverty wages. Yeah, it's a story like this. It's like, if it were actually true, to your point earlier, if it were actually real, those motherfuckers would be posting video of it all over the place. And that would be the
Oh yeah.
first thing that those people would think to do is pull out their phone to record this and then claim that they're Haitian migrants.
Eh, it's just so frustrating because they don't even have to try.
No.
There was another viral video today, had over like 2.5 million views I saw on Twitter. Some guy claiming that, well, my daughter's son tried to enroll in preschool, but because there's so many illegals in the neighborhood, he didn't speak Spanish, so he wasn't allowed. Zero proof.
But that shit travels so that
and,
is uh,
and it just travels.
that's a story like with a little bit of different facts that I've 100% heard from my wife's stepdad. Like
Oh,
a
100%.
100%.
And I've talked to, because like Sherrod Brown's in the fight of his life right now, and every pro ad that he's about is basically, he's tough on the border. The sheriffs love Sherrod Brown for the work he's done on the border and fighting fentanyl. And you talk to like Democrats who have like crunched the numbers, on this issue. And like the immigration and wall is like the number one issue of Ohio voters. It just tells you how much we've lost the plot. And it,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I've talked to
it's insane.
numerous staffers that have been like, um, Americans just hate immigrants. Like it's crazy. Like ever since COVID, like not that America was ever generally welcoming of the immigrants that our economy depends on, but since COVID, it has just completely spiked to the point where you've got, Biden was going to campaign on that, the border deal and that the
So,
Republicans killed, and they've shifted the Overton window.
and I mean, a big factor of that is the demonization of immigrants. And that was a hallmark of Donald Trump's campaign in 2016, and ever since then, they've been given this permission structure to be more blatant about it. I mean, Ted Cruz posted a racist meme today from his actual United States Senate account. So like they don't even give a shit anymore, and it's a shame because part of it is genuine, but part of it's this craven political play because they know. I mean, Ohio, there is absolutely no reason why immigration should be the number one issue in Ohio.
No, no. And it's so frustrating. So I don't really drive anymore. So I'm gonna like the Springfield's about 50 miles away or so. I'm gonna get on my bike next weekend and we're gonna like walk around. And not that, the videos that I produce will, get in front of the right wing freaks and the epiphany will happen. But I just think it's important for people to, see just how callous these lies
A
really
hundred
are.
percent, 100%. I completely agree. Well, I don't want to leave you without bringing up the Vivek Ramaswamy story because my co-host John and I have talked about that. That was one of the funniest things I think I've ever seen, and I was hoping you could just maybe walk us through just a little bit of that because I think I've explained the premise on the show before, but first of all, I didn't realize that he was a resident of Ohio,
Yeah.
and just the fact that he would believe that the Ohio State football coach was reaching out to him, wanting to meet at a raising canes is truly incredible to me.
So my wife was like, she goes, I completely just don't understand your audience because she's like, she's like, it's funny that you got him to come to Raising Cane's. It's not like I don't know, something hysterical. And it's like the guy wanted the nuclear codes. And I guess it started with I have a lobbyist friend and he was kind of new in the game and he said he was talking about state house politics and he goes, all you got to do, because I didn't realize before anyone can be a lobbyist. Like you don't have to like just be a paid, you can just, profiteer on your friendships with these
Yeah.
people. And he said the way to get into the business is to memorize a list. The Ohio legislature is about 120 people. Memorize their names and their faces, and then just one act of legislation that they've passed. Walk around the state house, and just when you see him, be like, "Hey, Representative so and so, I loved the Safe Children Act of 2022. It was great legislation."
Massage that ego. Yep.
And he said about 2 weeks of doing that around the state house, you'll be able to pass any kind of law you want up there.
Especially if you start calling them chairman too. They love that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so I've learned like you can just these people if you just pay them a compliment, and it wasn't even me that sent Ramaswamy the original text. It was one of my friends who shall not be named because I guess there could be some legal ramifications. But he sent him a text posing as Ryan Day, signed it RD, and was like, we love what you're doing with the country, Ramaswamy. Come talk. And that
Great.
was in April. And I had an old foreman in the electrical game that I'll never forget. He goes, I always enjoy when people only need a few words to offer searing insight into their mind.
Yeah.
And in that just simple exchange, it was like, okay, well, as long as you compliment Ramaswamy, he'll believe it. Like he's just completely egotistical to believe that yes, Ryan Day would be personally texting me. He has heard about me. He understands what I'm trying to do. And I texted him. I just got bored in earlier in August, was sitting around bored as I am sometimes. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna text Vivek. And I was like, I'm Tim Chitters, Ohio State football. The head coach said he wants you to talk. I was like, a lot of the players want you to run for governor. in 2026, if you can believe that. Like it was blatantly like just beside, and he bought it hook, line, and sinker, and he spun me off to the assistant.
The idea that the Ohio State players would give a fuck
Yeah.
about who ran for governor, let alone would want him, is hysterical.
And I've learned I got Frank LaRose to name me a fictitious Baptist pastor as his Miami campaign captain one time, like during his Senate campaign. So that was like the predecessor to this scam.
Yeah,
And
that's
I've learned
great.
if you just go to the boss, pay them a compliment, and the magic happens when the boss spins you off to one of their gremlins. Because
Yeah,
most people don't have a job for asking critical questions. So it's just like, okay, this guy, I'm told from the boss, this guy represents Ohio State. I'm not going to think anything of it. And I was like, we couldn't do it at the football facility. We needed a place where I could like get away and leave him hanging.
yeah.
And it just hit Raising Cane's. It's like right there. And they're like a sponsor of Ohio State athletics, and that's kind of like how I build it. And my lawyer was like, well, don't show up in an official Ohio State gear, none of that. And so I told him, just me, I was like, we just have passes for the assistant and Ramaswamy. Of course, this dickhead, about an hour before the meet, he's like, I get a call from his security guy. He's bringing like 5 people plus Ramaswamy and the assistant. I'm like, oh God, like the ski's already down the tracks. Uh, I'm like, okay, I'll talk to the security guys. I think we could swing it. Da 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 da. About 5 minutes before he gets there, the assistant called. She's with the intern out in the parking lot. I'm like, nobody said anything about an intern. And out of all the people, I felt the intern might have recognized me. I didn't know. Like, I wasn't even wearing an official Ohio State. Like, anybody who had any passing familiarity would have like known
That was
something going
one of
on.
the best parts. Is it was just an Ohio shirt, just
Yeah.
like a generic Ohio shirt.
My friend said it looked like if somebody did a Netflix movie about Ohio State football, but they couldn't secure the rights,
That's accurate. Yeah.
what they would be wearing. And so he showed up. I got the picture, and I was like, "Well, all right, man. Like, I guess we'll just do this interview right here outside this Raising Cane's." And he lies about everything. In one of he just I asked him, what are some of your favorite memories about Ohio State football? He's like, oh, well, like he was no Ohio State fan. He was a tennis guy down at St. X. Tried to say his parents came over here with no money. His parents, he went to a very prestigious private school, like one of the
Anything
most
named Saint
prestigious.
X, I mean, that's
Yeah,
not
St. Xavier.
public free. Yeah, no.
Yeah, and this was before the state was, subsidizing rich people to send their children to private schools too. And he's a pump and dump goof. And so then afterwards, camera cuts off, and I'm like, all right, well, because you never know how people are going to act, especially the security types that just want to prove, their $25 an hour is worth it to the rich people
Yeah.
that they guard. And so I'm like, all right. I was like, well, I got to get on my bike, And they're like, you're on your bike? And I was like, yeah, man. Like Joe Biden's economy, like we got to pay the players.
I
I
feel
was
like
like,
that's the moment. That had to have been the moment where they were like, wait a second. But you know what? Some of them probably bought the Joe Biden line because they're like, oh man, what a real American. Really, really
yeah.
living his truth.
Yeah. Because that's what I told, as soon as he came up, I thought the security guy might like try to like tase me or something, or they might have known something. And I was like, right. I was like, it's such an honor, Ramaswamy. It's such an honor to meet you. I hope you run for governor. It's such an honor. Got the picture. And so I think I had him snowed over. And then I wanted to have a friend at the Woody Hayes Center to like kind of be like hanging out and taking a photograph. But his brother-in-law got arrested for a DUI the night prior, which is story, it's typical Ohioan story.
Yeah.
He couldn't make it. So we just had to settle for the Shrek pianist. He like his assistants were like blowing me up. And even when he was like in the process of getting okey doked and it was like all crashing before him, he still couldn't humble himself to call the only person he had actually talked to. He left that to his assistants and he was like frantically calling the Google voicemail belonging to my friend saying, hey, we're here like in the area by the entrance, like we're here hanging out. And yeah, and then I just hit him with the calling card. It's like just a picture of Shrek holding
Oh
his
my
penis.
God. That
You
is
Vivek, you'll never be our governor, you pump and dump goof like the Rooster.
that.
And yeah. And then he tried to go to some right-wing freak, Jack Windsor, that we've got running around in Ohio. and he ran this article saying I had been gotten, that I tried to catfish Ramaswamy, and it was like, brother, there was no trying about it. Like he
The
showed up to
fact
a
that
Raising Cane's.
the fact that he even showed up, just him
Yeah,
showing up under all of that was a
yeah,
win for you.
and
Everything else was just bonus.
right, and I've done this long enough, and I've become friends with some of the people, and like there's one politician in the legislature. We used to have a big rivalry, and we've come to respect each other. And uh, he was out at a bar one time, and one of my friends saw him. I was like, go ask him. I was, beautiful woman, and I was like, go ask him what kind of drink he gets. And he was like, oh, lemon drop martini. And she told me. And then I'm on Twitter like spotted, state pervert drinking lemon drop martini. And he told me, he's like, even with that like simple gag, he's like, I tightened everything up. Like I became so paranoid.
Oh, I'm sure. Their
Yeah.
egos are so fragile, man.
Yeah, and so now, like, I try to show people that like these guys, you can't like morally be like these people are fascist, uh present them as like the paragon of evil. They are, but they get off on that type of thing. But
Yeah.
if you laugh at them and you ridicule them, it takes them back. Vance is the perfect example. Ramaswamy is the
Oh,
perfect example too.
100%.
It takes them back to, politics is high school. And it takes them back to those days where they were just some juiceless, little cloying nerd. Like, despite all the power, they'll always be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And just knowing that Ramaswamy probably, I hope he didn't fire his staff because honestly, it was on him.
Oh, 100%.
But I've heard enough to know about the guy. He's not a dream to work for. So if they did fire him, I did the staff a favor. But just knowing like going forward, he is going to have to vet everything to make sure he never ends up in that situation ever again. And so it's just a way where you can, you can hamper these people. You can put psychic damage on these people if you just post hard enough. I guess that's a closing message to your listeners.
I mean that is a perfect one because so much of their lives they're protected. They're around like yes men. They're being told how great they are.
Yeah.
Or yes, they love like these people that get elected. They love that because they can call themselves that for the rest of their lives. Even if you were a senator for one term, people will still call you senator, and they love that. JD Vance loves it. And so taking them down a peg that's why the weird thing has gotten under their skin so much. Not they're evil, they're diabolical, these power hungry. They're weird, they're creepy, and what the fuck is wrong with them? And he swims in a t-shirt like that, which was it shallow TMZ? Probably, but I'll tell you what, as a former fat kid, that one cuts deep, buddy.
Yeah, and that's the perfect representation too. Like somebody was like, "Oh, well, do you sunburn easily?" I was like, I mean, I'm on my bike, so no, not really. I was like, I would just put on sunscreen.
Yeah. He was seeing all these stories about Joe Biden at the beach, and he sat there and thought about it overnight. Was like, gosh, I don't want people making adjustments about my body, so I'm going to put a shirt on because that's how JD Vance would think.
Yeah, the best theory that I've heard is he's got some tattoo that he doesn't want us to see.
That would be incredible.
With Vance, it could be like a Tasmanian devil, having
tramp stamp or something.
Or it could just be a literal swastika on his chest.
A Tweety Bird tramp stamp would be the true Ohio redneck right there, buddy.
It would be the most Ohio thing about him, that's for sure.
Yeah, that is true. Oh man. Well, this has been great, DJ. I really appreciate you coming on. It's been a fun conversation. I will tell everybody listening to subscribe to the Rooster. I love what you do, man, and I am looking forward to everything that you put out in the future.
Appreciate it. You too.
All right, take care, man.
God bless. Yeah, that's me and Vivek Ramaswamy standing in a parking lot outside a famous chicken shack in Columbus, Ohio that you might have heard of. Now you're probably wondering, how did I get myself into this situation? Well, as it turns out, it's a lot easier to catfish Ramaswamy than you might think. The deception starts in April when a high-ranking member of the Patriots caucus, pretending to be Ohio State head football coach Ryan Day, sent Ramaswamy a text message claiming that he was a big fan of what Ramaswamy was doing for this country, and he invited Ramaswamy to come on the radio show or perhaps speak to the team. Most notably, he signed the text RD. Now, this should have been a red flag for Ramaswamy, Ryan Day does not text individuals. He certainly does not sign his text messages, but the compliment had been paid, and from there, we had him in our pocket. Fast forward to August. I'm on my couch, bored, when I decide to resurrect one of my old alcoholic aliases, Tim Chitters. Now, in his lore, Tim Chitters is a former Ohio State football quarterback who loves drugs, barbecue, and black women, usually in that order. Now, I decided to adopt this alias as an OSU staffer, quote unquote, and I sent a text message to Ramaswamy saying the head football coach would like him to speak to the team, and if he could believe it, a lot of players wanted him to be governor in 2026. Now, this should have been another red flag to Ramaswamy. Football players are generally not known for their opinions on future gubernatorial races, let alone their participants, but the compliment had been paid, and from there, we had Ramaswamy on the hook. From there, it became a matter of setting the time, date, and location. Now, it's not like we could meet at the Ohio State football facilities. We needed a non-discrepant location that was somewhere in the vicinity. And we chose the famous Chicken Shack that you might have heard about off Olentangy Road, a mere stone's throw from the football facilities. The night before the date, I was a little concerned he was going to make the meet because Ramaswamy, for God only knows what reasons, was in Chicago, pestering pro-Palestinian protesters and buying Trotskyist newspapers for $5. But lo and behold, our brave boy was up at 9 a.m. the next day, texting with who he thought was Ryan Day, asking for ideas on what to speak to the team about. My friend, who shall not be named, gave him some gobbledygook about having your brother's back and stuff, themes of the season. And we knew then we had Ramaswamy coming to meet. There was only one problem. I had laid out to Amanda, the assistant, that space was tight. I didn't want to deal with a bunch of schmoes. So I said we had passes for her and Ramaswamy. But I get a call from a mysterious 917 number about an hour before the meet when I'm already at the Chicken Shack. And it's a guy named Kevin. He says he's from the security for Ramaswamy's team. He has the whole entourage that they're about to leave. And I say, well, the scheme's already down the tracks. We got to make do. So I get the names of the people. You can see them here. And I say, you know what? Let me talk to the security team. I might be able to work something out. We can get you guys passes. Bring the whole crew. So that's what they did. Then, minutes before the meet, I get a text from Amanda saying her and an intern, nobody said anything about a goddamn intern, we're standing in the parking lot. So I had to go talk these guys down. And out of all the people involved in the scheme, I thought the intern might have seen me on TikTok or something, calling some state legislator a pervert. I just had a bad feeling. I thought he was going to oust me. I'm just some guy on the camera, not even wearing official Ohio State stuff. And lo and behold, we got talking. He was a big fan of Caleb Downs. I'm sorry to the intern. It was his last day, but we made it memorable. And minutes later, Vivek graced us with our presence, rolling in the type of SUV usually reserved for these rich, important people to let you know how rich, important people inside of them are. Now, I'm not going to lie. When the security guy gets out of the car, I'm thinking, am I about to get tased? Or am I about to get punked myself? What's going on? So I didn't know what to do. So I just walked up to him, threw my hand out and said, Tim, nice to meet you. And from there, we got the picture, and that was all I needed at that point to show how easy it was to fool Ramaswamy and his team. I got the picture, and not having anything else to do, we had an impromptu interview right by the logo for the famous Chicken Shack that you can see here. Here are some of the clips just to see what he was talking about, what you can get an idea of what Ramaswamy would have been talking about had he been able to talk to our famous boys.
And you know what? My parents never imagined that their son would found multi-billion-dollar companies when they came to this country with not a money in their pocket 40 years ago. And yet here we are. So it's the greatest country known to man. That flag up there, it means something, right?
Yes, it does. Now, at this point, I'm like, I got to get out of here. You never know what people will do when they're embarrassed, let alone the types of people that run security for a rich goose like Ramaswamy. So I said, I got to get on my bike. Joe Biden's economy, gas prices are in shambles. We got to pay the players. We're cutting corners at Ohio State. Times are tight. So I got out of there. Now, I was supposed to have an associate at the Woody Hayes Center to take photographic evidence of Ramaswamy breaking the news to his entourage that no, he would not be speaking to the local team on this day. But due to circumstances outside of our control, the Patriot was not able to make it this day. So instead, while cackling like a jackal and Ramaswamy frantically calling and texting the number he thought belonged to Ryan Day, I just had to hit him with what's become the calling card of the Patriots caucus in these situations. Yeah, that's right. That's a picture of Shrek's dang-a-lang, I guess is how you would say in TikTok parlance. Uncensored, of course, but I let Ramaswamy know a thing. He will never be our governor because he's a pump and dump goof who everybody can see coming, except apparently a small cabal of Republican voters.